Good evening.
Hello.
Welcome to the Castro Files. Welcome back.
Yes.
Unless it's your first time. If it's your first time, you're in for a couple creepy stories tonight.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are good.
These are some good ones. So I'm Greg LaMontagne. This is Beth LaMontagne. How you doing?
Also, Beth Castro.
Beth Castro from the
LaMontagne.
Castro Files.
Yes.
Castro LaMontagne. Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you coming and hanging out. First things first, post these out generally on Sunday evenings. I think we're going to switch to Sunday evenings versus Sunday mornings. We're getting into the Halloween time. I'm like, gets a little spooky. You're tired of watching football, perhaps.
You've watched football all day, and now you need something else to do while you watch
Yeah,
football?
something to get your anxiety up about
you
right
go.
before you go to bed. So
Right.
that's good. Yeah,
Tonight's
absolutely.
are going to be good.
Yeah, so these are going to be good ones. So I've got one on a furniture item that hopefully you don't have lying around your house. And specifically this one, I know you don't have this one. But there are items that you could accidentally pick up in an antique shop.
Yes.
Unintentionally. We've talked about these in the past, right?
Right.
On other shows and stuff like that, where you get that dresser or you get that chair.
That antique item.
Yeah.
That looks really
You
cool,
know,
and you
somebody
know
was-
exactly where you're going to put it in your house.
Somebody threw it out on the curb to go to the
Go to the
dumpster or
dump,
something,
yeah.
and
you
you're
thought
like,
it was
I
cool.
can fix that up.
Yep.
You're going to want to reconsider some of that,
Yes.
perhaps,
Maybe.
right?
Perhaps.
You're like, why is this thing perfectly good?
Yes.
And they're just getting rid of it?
There's a reason.
Something to reason.
Yeah.
What do you have tonight?
I have an unsolved murder mystery from 1922.
And I've seen the pictures, and it's creepy.
It is creepy.
So, absolutely. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So, my story first is from Inputmagcom, and this is the story, finally the truth behind the haunted Dybbuk Box can be revealed. So, a Dybbuk Box is basically where they take it's from the Jewish community, basically, where they take a demon and they trap it in this thing, right?
Okay.
And I have some pictures and I'll explain as we go. So,
Perfect.
the cursed cabinet inspired a Hollywood film and spooked Post Malone as well. Now, the man who first sold it on eBay in 2003 is coming clean. So he's trying to say one thing.
Okay.
And he's kind of going, I don't know if he's just trying to get rid of some stuff, right? Some
Okay.
bad juju or something
Maybe.
like that. Back in 2001, Kevin Manis was out visiting yard sales looking for supplies for his furniture restoration business, a hole-in-the-wall shop located at the base of the Burnside Bridge in Portland, Oregon. The story goes that he purchased an old wine cabinet from the granddaughter of a recently deceased Holocaust survivor named Havela, who escaped Nazi-occupied Poland. Havela's parents, brothers, sisters, husband, 2 sons, and a daughter were all killed. Oh. She, with other survivors, fled to Spain and lived there until the end of the war. When Havela, who lived to 103, immigrated to the U.S., the wine cabinet was only one of 3 items she brought with her.
Oh, wow.
And I'll show you real quick. I'm going to put this up here. This is the Dybbuk Box in this story. This is a very famous Dybbuk Box. As Manis paid for the cabinet, Havela's granddaughter said, "I see you bought the Dybbuk Box." Manis wasn't familiar with the term. The granddaughter told him her grandmother always kept it shut out of reach because of the Dybbuk. There was a Dybbuk in Jewish folklore, an evil, restless spirit that possesses the living inside of it. The seller purportedly told Manis that it was never to be opened, and if it was, bad things would happen. He did not heed the warning. Manis, who was in his mid-30s at the time, took the box back to his shop with plans to restore it and give it to his mother for her birthday. After opening the cabinet, he found a series of strange objects inside. 2 U.S. wheat pennies dating to 1925 and 1928, 2 locks of hair, a dried rosebud, a 4-legged candlestick, a golden wine cup, and a granite sculpture inscribed with the Hebrew word shalom. The Shema, a prayer considered to be one of the most important in Judaism, was carved on the back of the cabinet. Manus gave the box to his mother, Ida, on Halloween. In a 2012 interview on the TV series Paranormal Witness, Ida describes feeling a cold breeze from the box as she opened its doors, then experiencing pure evil come out of it. She said she immediately had a stroke.
Oh, shit.
Over the course of 2 years, a number of other mysterious events befell Manus and those around him. His sister got creeped out by the cabinet because the doors kept opening on their own. His brother and his sister-in-law complained of odd smells coming from the box, like cat urine and jasmine.
Interesting.
Right? Manus and his siblings suffered from the same recurring nightmares of an old woman with sunken eyes. And most disturbingly, he says the brother of a store employee died by suicide shortly after visiting the shop and knocking the cabinet off the shelf.
Oh, man.
A couple of years later, the worker himself also took his own life.
Oh, wow.
Manus at one point tried to give the box to his then girlfriend, but after keeping it for a time, she forced him to take it back. Then he began seeing what he later described as shadow things in his peripheral vision. Listing it on eBay in 2003, Manus, who has a background in writing, advertising, and in entertainment, wrote a very long and detailed product description in which he dubs the item a Dybbuk Box. Manus's eBay listing details how he got it, the strange things that happened to him and his family afterwards, and why he wants to get rid of it. Toward the end of the description, he writes, "Help me." Since then, the Dybbuk Box has captured the popular imagination, becoming the stuff of the internet legend and commerce. You can buy Dybbuk boxes of all shapes and sizes on Etsy and eBay. We've talked about that in the past, like haunted items. I did the mirror story, right? You can go out and you can find things, right?
I mean, some people like that stuff, but they have a healthy respect for it, hopefully.
Hopefully, right? So, and there's a website specifically dedicated to them, the Dybbuk Box store. You can even watch people open Dybbuk boxes on YouTube. In 2011, a subsequent owner of Manus's box, Jason Haxton, released a book about the box. The director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri, Haxton had studied American antiques and ancient artifacts for decades and was fascinated by the mysterious wine cabinet. In his book, he detailed what befell him, everything from bleeding eyes to random choking attacks to, yes, recurring dreams of a creepy old woman. Wow. In the first few months after buying the box. In 2012, the most prominent of 3 movies about the Dybbuk Box, The Possession, produced by filmmaker Sam Raimi, was released. Both Manus and Haxton were production consultants on the film.
They were the 2 owners of the box.
They were the prior owners, okay. Or the current and the prior.
Right.
In an Entertainment Weekly article published around the time of the movie's release, director Ole Bornedal claims that really weird things happened during production. He describes standing underneath an unlit neon light that randomly exploded and says that 5 days after shooting wrap, all of the props from the film were destroyed in a mysterious fire. Over the past 5 years, Dybbuk fever has hit an all-time high thanks to one famous ghost hunter, Zach Baggins, the host of the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventure show, and its slew of spin-offs. In 2016, Haxton sold the box to Baggins for a sum neither party is willing to reveal. That year, Baggins featured both Manus and Haxton on an episode of Ghost Adventures, Deadly Possessions. We watched this during lockdown, right?
Yep.
Also known as Ghost Adventures Artifacts, in which he brings the box to his haunted museum in Las Vegas. We've seen it.
Yes.
Under the case, though. Remember,
Yeah,
it was
in
another case.
Yeah, very thick glassed.
Right. If you guys, it's still there. You can go to the haunted museum in Las Vegas, and I recommend if you go to Vegas, you go check out his.
And also during the time we were all shut down, I'm blinking on what you
Pandemic.
Yes, thank you. The pandemic. He actually opened the Dybbuk Box.
We're
going to
talk about that here, yeah.
So yeah.
So this is the inside. These are the items that were found inside of this particular Dybbuk box, right?
Okay.
So going into this, he brought it to Las Vegas. Like I said, today is one of the museum's highlights, touted as the world's most haunted object. Last year, the now 44-year-old Baggins opened the box on an episode of Ghost Adventures Quarantine. He supposedly heard it say Kevin, referencing Manus, and evil, then heard a child's voice. The show captured on camera what Baggins and his crew claimed was a figure that manifested inside the box. And you can go out and you can search
Watch
these.
it.
And I'll put the links in the in the show description once we post this. The highlights of the episode, however, at least from the media standpoint, was security camera footage of Baggins and his friend, the musician Post Malone, touching the closed Dybbuk box prior to Baggins opening it. Okay, so technically, Malone didn't touch the box, it goes on to say. But here's the picture from the actual show. And Baggins had his hand on Malone like this and then was touching the box.
Right.
Right? Like that. So to give you kind of an example. Baggins had his hand on it, but the bad vibes supposedly transferred to the musician. In the ensuing months, his private plane was forced to make an emergency landing. His San Fernando Valley home was broken into. This is Post Malone's. Mm-hmm. And his car, he was even involved in a car accident. Incidents he would later talk about on Seth Meyers' late night show. Of course, over the years, there have been plenty of skeptics.
Right.
Of course, there's always skeptics to everything,
always. Right?
Various reports, including 2004 Los Angeles Times story and this 2012 Riverfront Times piece, have cast doubt on the legend of the Dybbuk Box. In a 2019 Skeptical Inquirer magazine writer, it was in a column from the Skeptical Inquirer, writer Kenny Biddle dismisses the haunted wine cabinet as a hoax. As proof, Biddle posts a screenshot of the Facebook post from Manus, dated October of 2015. This is where he goes in to say, I am the original creator of the Dybbuk Box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. The idea that Dybbuk boxes have some kind of history prior to my story, and the idea that a Dybbuk box could contain anything other than a Dybbuk, along with any deviation to the type of contents I created to be found inside of the Dybbuk box, is laughable at best. Because he's saying he created it all.
He's backtracking.
Right? Yeah, but this was from a post from 2005.
Right.
Or 3 or whatever I said. Yeah, 2015, yeah.
Right.
But he's since been on the show on
right.
Ghost Adventures, right? So he goes on to say, how about this? If you or anywhere else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead. I'd personally never heard of the Dybbuk box until February when I was interviewed. This is the author of this article saying that. Interviewed a paranormal investigator for a podcast I'm creating. So, again, it goes into saying, was this Kevin Manus that created this?
Right.
Or is this a real thing?
Right. Like, did he really buy it at a garage sale and was told all these things? And did his mom have these strokes?
So what do you think? There are haunted
items,
things out there, right? Where you see...
But there's
if you believe in it,
there's
right?
two trains of thought. So where did he come up with a very specific story about where he bought it from and what she said and who it belonged to and the travesties that woman went through? And so that, makes it
and
legit.
How are there multiple people having...
Well, then the second thought is did he cook up this idea in his head and thought this stuff into existence as he made the box, and it became an evil object that way? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it's an evil object. I think it's just depending upon truth.
Like all of the intention and
truth, like
attention to that item.
Well, you can make bad things happen.
Yeah.
You can put evil things into something if you are thinking about them enough as he builds this. Like, was he perhaps building this box with the intention of saying, oh, I'm going to make the greatest story about this box. I'm going to make some good money on it. And here's what the box has been through and what it does. And now you've manifested that.
It's a creepy way to think about it. It's kind of, what came to mind there for a second, it's like you can get a plant and you can play really good music.
I wonder
for this
if
plant
you paid anybody,
it'll thrive,
yes,
and you can yell at that plant
and it'll die.
Right? It's a weird kind of thing, right?
And I wonder if he ended up paying anybody $100,000 because I'm sure somebody was probably able to find a Dybbuk box outside of his supposed creation
it's not
of the box.
Only one,
no.
Right?
I'm glad you think so highly of yourself, but come on now.
I don't know. So you go on to say, it's just, again, it's picking up, like when you're in an antique store and they say, don't ever open this item.
Probably heed that.
Or don't buy it.
Right. Or just be prepared for crap to happen.
You never know. Again.
I kind of think it's weird that he gave it to his mom after she said, don't open it. Okay, here, Mom. Happy birthday, open it.
It's got some creepy things in it.
Yeah.
It's got some random
Hair.
Candle. What was on it?
Hair, candle, golden.
Yeah, like, are you going to leave the hair and candle in there for your mom?
Right? I mean, what was she like? Oh, thank you for this random people's hair.
Yeah, two pieces of hair, 2 bundles of hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, again, an interesting kind of story. These are out there. You can go out and you can do your own homework on these. It's always fun to do homework on them. But I think about like purchasing old furniture. There's a lot of intent. There's a lot of life history into that. Furniture can outlive people.
Oh, and it's gone through so much
centuries.
Stuff. Through so much stuff. You think about furniture that went through the Civil War.
Right.
And people may have...
silverware or whatever
people may
those
have
things.
laid on it, as they passed away, or bled on it because they had to get an arm amputated. I mean, there's
so much
energy that probably happens into things that we don't think about because we don't think about things that way.
Right, absolutely. So this one, I think we're going to tag team a bit, right? Your story, because it's pretty long. Are you good?
How about I'll start, and if I get too tired, I'll let you read?
Because this one's a good one.
This one's a good one.
It's an intense one, and we've got a whole bunch of pictures and stuff to share with this one. So let me get those.
I would say let's save those until afterwards.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just need to get them queued.
Yep. So again, I'm a huge fan of Hannah Tiddy.
Okay.
I don't know how to use Tiddy, Tidy, Tiddy.
Tiddy. Yeah.
And she is an author that does real stories. She captures real stories.
Okay.
And then she puts them in the books. This one is called Horror Stories, Terrifying Real Stories of the True Horror and Chilling Murders.
All right.
So
this one's a little darker.
This one's really, well, I say that. I'd heard of this story before.
Really?
Yeah. On a podcast, I heard about it. I had never seen it.
Seen the photos from
or
it. Or
even seen the story anywhere before I found Hannah's.
Okay, cool.
So this one is called, the story is actually called The Farm Straight from Hell. And
it's a great title.
That's
going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
And it's going to make you think, like, if you hear things bump in the night in your house, like we always hear creaking up here, it's like, well, okay, what was that? On a quiet night on March 31st, 1922, in a small, unassuming farmstead between the Bavarian towns, and I'm going to get these names wrong. I'm just going to put that out there now.
That's fair.
Small Bavarian town of Ingolstadt and Schronbenhausen, which are about 70 kilometers north of Munich. One of the most terrifying and mysteriously unsolved murders in Germany's chillingly took place. So this is in Germany, 1922.
All right.
Was this the work of the devil or someone who seemed to do his evil bidding? On that quiet evening, different darkness descended on the small farmhouse called I told you I was going to be able to say this name. Hinterkaifeck.
Okay.
And tragically, there was no one around that night to hear the horrified screams and agonizing suffering of the victims. Piercing screams unanswered in the cold night air, together with the ominous thud of the mattock, which is a German pickaxe, the impact fatal on human skin and bone, and the unknown killer brutally and systematically slaughtering all the inhabitants one by one. So,
with a pickaxe?
Yes.
Come on.
Right? I mean, so these
like
were the only
this
terrible
is like
sounds.
Jason kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it gets better. Hold on. These were the only terrifying sounds that night in the farmstead. After that, a haunting silence for the next few days. The unfortunate family who lived on the farm were the Gerbers. Andreas, who was 63, was the farmer and husband of Kazila, 72, and the father of their widowed daughter, Victoria Gable, who was 35, who was the official owner of the farm. Victoria lived with her mother and father on the farmstead, along with her two younger children, Kazilia, who was 7, and Joseph, who was 2. On that terrible and mysterious night, they also had a new maid. Talk about bad luck. Maria Baumgartner, 44, who arrived at the household only a few hours before and was also an unfortunate victim in the slaying.
Oh, come.
Yeah.
That's just bad.
I mean,
timing.
Yeah,
like,
right?
Oh, I could have missed my...
I mean, if I just would have started a day later.
Yeah.
Andreas Gruber and the entire Gruber family were known to be quite well off in the area, but not particularly well liked amongst the townspeople. The family lived a considerable distance outside of town, with the farmstead quietly hidden within the forest, and they were known by the village to be reclusive and mostly kept to themselves. The home was far off from their nearest neighborhood, but the lives of the Gruber family were also still a much talked about topic in the town. Andreas regularly beat his wife and also had a long history of being brutal and maltreating of his children in the past. Victoria was the only surviving child of her father's cruel punishment and parenting style. None of her other siblings survived the vicious beatings. But amongst all this old talk and scandal, the moral reason that genuinely shocked the sensibility of the townspeople and affected how they felt towards this family was the alleged abusive relationship between Andreas and his only daughter, Victoria. It goes into that in a little bit more. Okay. But this practice was illegal, but unfortunately still fairly commonplace in rural towns like theirs. I was laughing because I kept saying this name totally wrong, but Lorenz Schulzenbacher, a neighboring farmer, officially admitted that he was the father of young Joseph. That was not enough to quell the rumors and hush the talk that Victoria's young son was the ancestral fruit of an illicit relationship between Victoria and her father. Andreas also said to be obsessed with Victoria and sternly forbade her from even talking about getting remarried after she became a widow. But like a true lady of good stock, despite all the talk and rumors mongering in town, Victoria held herself above the malicious fray and often attended church services. She even became an active member of the church choir with her beautiful singing voice. After some time, the community eventually accepted Victoria. She had her place, despite her family background, because of her steadfast devotion to the church and constant attendance at service. But back at the farm, things started to take a slow, ominous turn for the worst. One day, the Gruber household maid quit her job and requested to leave almost immediately. The maid stated she no longer wanted to work in the home because of the strange sounds and voices she heard, as well as footsteps echoing from the empty attic. Convinced that there was a haunting in the house, she no longer felt safe staying there. Witnesses stated that the maid was pale and emaciated when she left, looking as if though she'd gone through a rough number of nights of pure horror. The Grubers did not take the maid's story seriously and even believed that she must have been mentally disturbed. About 6 months later, another strange and mysterious occurrence materialized at the farm. Andres Gruber was outside in the farm making rounds and walking in the front yard near the woods when he discovered odd-shaped footprints in the snow. He followed the strange tracks until he reached the main house and saw that the footprints led directly to his front door. Andres was quite concerned at this point because he looked over all the property and did not find any other prints leading from the house back out to the forest. So all in, nothing out.
Yep.
He thought frantically that perhaps an intruder was inside the home intruder was inside the house, someone who had come walking through the woods on this cold night. Andre searched and searched in vain all over the house, but did not find any strange people on the premises, with nothing out of place or missing. Andre settled down to an uneasy sleep that night, still unable to figure out where the strange footsteps might have come from and who had made them while entering his house. I'm getting hot, sorry.
That's always something you got to be like,
what the? Well, and it probably was, if they were so far up, there weren't local police, so he couldn't just go to them and be like, hey,
something like, yeah,
I found these strange
you
footsteps.
Deal with this on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I'm searching that whole house with a pickaxe in my hand, probably.
Probably.
If I don't have a gun or something. I'm just saying. Yeah.
So later that same night, Andreas was awoken by a strange and unexplained noise coming from the attic. He remembered what the previous maid said about the sounds and voices in the attic. Andres decided then and there to check for himself to see who was making the strange noises, but he did not find anything in the attic. Andres could barely fathom what was happening by that time. He felt that he could also be losing his mind. What were these odd noises and strange footprints that he saw earlier? Were they just in his head? Was it was as if an intruder had come in from the forest, entered their home, and simply disappeared into thin air.
Or your attic.
Right. Where you're hearing all this stuff from, right?
Wouldn't it have been creepy if he found like wet feet marks like going? And then
I don't think it's any creepier than the snow marks into the front door and then nothing.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
All right. The next morning, The strange occurrences continued with a vengeance. Andre found a newspaper on his front porch that had never been seen before, and no one in his household recognized it. Later that day, he walked by the tool shed out back and was confused to see multiple scratches and deep cuts on the door as if someone was trying to break into the shed. By that time, the strangeness of what was happening finally got to him, and he talked with his nearest neighbor about the strange events happening at the farm. The neighbors also shared that Andres casually mentioned to them that his own set of house keys recently went missing. Crestfallen, the neighbors recounted to the authorities after the massacre that the loss of the keys coincidentally happened a few days before the tragedy that befell the family. Sadly, no one reported these incidents to the authorities before the savage attack on the unknowing family. On the fatal and tragic day of March 31st, 1922, a new maid, Maria Baumgarten, 44, was on her way to the Gruber household to begin her first day of work. Maria would never know that while she cheerfully reported for work that day,
She was probably so
in just
happy.
a few hours of her stepping in the threshold of the cursed farm, Maria would be savagely murdered for being in the wrong place at the wrong possible time. Yeah.
She's probably so happy. I got a job at this big,
Right.
beautiful house.
And I've got a roof over my head, and they're going to pay me and all this great stuff.
Yeah.
4 days after the fateful day on April 4th, the Gruber absence was palpably felt and finally noticed in the town, and the townspeople were starting to worry about the family and their new maid. Victoria's youngest daughter, Kazilia, was not showing up for her classes at school, and Victoria herself had not been attending church, which was very unlike her. The postman in town also noticed that their mail was unclaimed as well. Something was amiss. A few townsfolk decided to check the Gruber farm to check in on them and make sure they were safe. When the group of concerned citizens knocked on the door and called out for them, no one answered. A search of the property and the nearby forest did not produce anything beyond normal either. Okay. The townsfolk also noted that the air at the farm on that terrible day was stale and eerily quiet. The barn was the last building checked. The townspeople opened the door and met with the most horrific sight ever imagined. On the floor of the old barn, lying in a gruesome pool of their blood, lay the lifeless bodies of Andreas, his wife, his daughter, and his youngest granddaughter. Their bodies were positioned in the middle of the barn and covered in hay. So the killer, after he killed them, covered them.
Bury him. He just covered him in hay. Yeah.
Right. And you look at the pictures in a minute, and he mostly just covered their heads.
Okay. I did kind of see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird. Interesting.
Right. The Gruber family appeared to have been systematically lured into the barn one by one and brutally attacked as they innocently entered to face their untimely death. As horrifying as the scene in the barn was, what was even more painfully apparent to those who were witnessed on that terrible day was the sight of the dead little girl with clumps of her hair torn out of her scalp. Wait, you'll find out why. Okay. They could only deduce that she had been alive long enough after the attack on her to witness the scene in the barn straight from hell that unfolded in front of her innocent eyes. Upon discovering the bodies in the barn, the townfolk began to search for the new maid frantically and the little boy, in case they were still alive and needed help. But they were tragically found in the farmhouse and suffered the same evil fate as the others. The little boy Joseph laying on top of his bed in Victoria's bedroom, and the maid Maria was found dead in her bedroom. It was apparent that both the maid and the little boy had also lost enormous amounts of blood. On that fateful and tragic day, it was confirmed by all those present that all 6 members of the farm had been brutally murdered in cold blood.
Yeah.
The townspeople immediately called the authorities, and a few hours later, the police officers from the Munich Police Department arrived. Inspector George Rubiger was the leader of the team in charge of the murder investigation. The police team initially suspected that the real motive for the murders was a robbery, and they proceeded to interrogate suspicious-looking people from the nearby village, as well as transient merchants and even beggars in the vicinity. But that robbery theory was laid to rest when a significant sum of money was quickly discovered in the house during the investigation, and all other family valuables remained intact as well.
Yeah, there's no jewelry stolen.
Nothing was
there's
taken.
A bunch of cash.
A thief would have found that large sum of money quickly and would have made off with the family heirlooms if that was the real motive.
And then they would have hightailed it out of that little area.
Exactly.
Or that they wouldn't be
They
staying
wouldn't
in
been
the
left
village
behind
drinking
to get
beers
interviewed. Right.
Or whatever, and being like, oh, look at all my newfound riches.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So during the ongoing police investigations, Authorities discovered that a few weeks before the hellish night at the farm, Victoria completely emptied her bank account. She even borrowed some additional funds from her half-sister to serve as seed money for investing in the farmstead. Victoria also serendipitously, yes, thank you, donated a 700 gold mark in the church confessional. When the parish priest traced the amount back to her as the secret donor, she told the priest to keep the money for missionary work.
Cool.
During the investigation, the police did not know if it was related to the murders, but the sizable withdrawal from Victoria's bank account was never accounted for. Was that the money at the house, or was it not? Mm-hmm. Another theory and criminal motive the investigators played around with was possibly the murder being a crime of passion. The police widely speculated that Victoria's former ardent suitor, a man by the name of Lorenz Schulzenbauer, had a plausible motive to want the Gruber family dead. It was widely talked about in town that he could be young Joseph's true father. The majority believed that this was not so, and that Joseph was the dad's son. When the police interrogated this man, he confessed that he knew about Andreas and Victoria's illicit and illegal relationship and was disgusted by it. The motive was that the sordid incestual relationship must have enraged the love-struck man, and he retaliated by killing the entire family, even his alleged son, young Joseph. The police persisted in following up on this particular murder motive involving the suspect, but they were unable to find evidence to support their claim. The police leads were all turning up with dead ends and steadily starting to grow cold. So they couldn't...
There's just nowhere to go.
They couldn't put him there.
They didn't have... I mean, they got to think it's 1922.
Right.
Or whatever, 23 or whatever, right?
22.
And, I mean, you don't have, like, forensic... Like, I mean, well, maybe...
No.
Could they do fingerprint analysis back? I mean, not via computer, obviously, but like I don't know. Like how? Because I'm thinking like the pickaxe
could have had fingerprints on it.
I don't know. Like
how would you even know who to look for?
I keep picturing what was Robert Downey Jr. What was that movie? Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I was
on
about
this
that
kind
too.
of a thing.
Like,
right?
have we ever seen him do?
Yeah, I just it's like it's 1922. It's a different time.
Yep. They did not have things that we have today.
Yeah.
The day after the horrible discovery of the murders at the farm, on April 5th, 1922, the court physician, Dr. John Baptiste Mueller, performed all the medical autopsies in the barn of the farmstead. The physician established that a farm tool such as a hatchet or German pickaxe was a logical murder weapon. Each victim was killed the same way, with a single and forceful blow to the head. The way the murderer used the hatchet determined that, through the murder was very precise, it only killed with one blow. But there were a lot of hatred in each swing of the hatchet.
So when such a heavy blow.
Yes, when he swung hard. Because the heads of the victim had all split open with the impact, but the bodies were untouched. Whoever the murderer was, they were very comfortable using the hatchet.
Yeah, that's like that's like a baseball. Like you play baseball, right?
Yeah,
and you swing a bat.
And did he come from behind them then? Because
that's what I'm trying to think. Like, how do you?
I mean, I guess if you don't expect somebody to do it, and you come up to front, and all of a sudden they're
like, how do you kill 6 people and it's with one strike each, right? Like if they're in the bed, okay, it's pretty easy, like,
right?
Right, but you go like the other people, maybe they were awake. If they weren't in bed, they were out in the barn, or they were wherever they were murdered. Yeah.
So the autopsy showed that all the victims died instantly, except for the little girl and daughter of Victoria Cazilia. The terrified little girl survived for several hours after the single blow to her head. It's unimaginable to think of what was going through her mind during those terrible hours. Whatever her thoughts were, they were horrifying enough to cause her to pull out tufts of her own hair from her scalp while the life seeped out of her weak body on the barn floor. So that's why she had several bald spots, because she was probably pulling on her hair.
Probably her head hurt.
Her head hurt, and she was scared. The police spent several...
Oh, that's sad.
Yes, the police spent many days investigating the crime scene, concluding that an intruder must have figured out a way to lure them out of the house and into the barn, one at a time, over a series of hours. Police thought the first 2 victims would have been Victoria and her mother, Cazilia, because they were in their evening clothes, and their deaths were probably earlier in the evening than the rest.
Okay.
The killer then proceeded to the farmhouse to finish off the little boy and Maria, the maid. The murder covered all the bodies with some sort of material. The bodies in the barn were all covered with hay. Joseph's mother's skirt covered him, and the bed sheet covered the maid, Maria. The strange show of delayed courtesy and false modesty for the dead bodies points towards a theory that the killer had some sort of emotional bond or connection with the victims and covering them up to hide what he had done or they had done.
Yeah, he was ashamed or something,
I
kind of
felt
something
guilty,
like
yeah.
that. Guilt. Yeah.
Another bizarre occurrence to add to the already convoluted murder mystery was that the neighbors witnessed on the weekend right after the murder. The date of the death was determined March 31st, and it was 4 days before anyone discovered the bodies at the farm. However, neighbors claimed to have been seeing smoke coming out of the chimney on the last 2 days. The animals on the farm were well fed. The family dog was tied in the barn unharmed with food and water. Nothing indicated the animals had gone almost a week without food. Police also found a bed in the farmhouse showing signs of recently being slept in, meaning that after murdering the victims, the killer stayed around for a few days, unbothered by the cover of corpses in the vicinity. The murderer possibly slept in the house and even cooked food, as the neighbors claimed to see smoke from the chimney.
So he had a fire going. And
he had
stuff
stuff.
like that.
Yep.
And
Slept
he was
in a bed.
Taking care. Maybe he was just a transient dude going through, and he's like, "I'm gonna live the life for a couple days,
I don't
but I gotta
know.
kill 6 people to do it."
But then why would he have cared and covered them up?
But why wouldn't he have taken the money?
I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions. So throughout the years, the police have questioned 100 or so murder suspects and even employed clairvoyants to try and figure out what happened at the farm. If the murderer made noises in the attic that first maid heard before she left, that meant the killer would have been in the attic for over 6 months before the actual murders occurred.
Oh my God.
That's crazy, right? That's creepy AF.
There's other stories out there you can go search where, and I think you've got one coming up in the next couple weeks or so, right? It's like the dude in the attic.
Oh, no, this is that one.
Or this is that attic one. Okay, but there's other ones that I've seen. It's like more current day.
Yeah.
Where like you look up in your vent and you see like an eyeball.
Yeah.
And you're
see
like,
somebody watching you and you're like, get the
dude,
hell out right now.
I'm shooting my ceiling at that point.
No, I'm getting the hell out.
No, I'm shooting my ceiling.
No, I'm calling the police. You shoot, I'm out. I'm calling the police.
I don't know. I mean, I was like, what else do you do? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Then, just a little bit more. Then, right after the brutal murders, the killer would have had the audacity to stay for almost a week, very much at home in an unfortunate household.
He was very comfortable there because
Yes.
he probably knew it inside and out, right?
Well, this is what's crazy. The case has been continuously reopened in 1996 and most recently again in 2007. However, all the evidence always ends up leading to a dead end in this very cold case. The farm was demolished the year after the tragedy, as the townfolk did not want a remaining reminder to them of the horrific events that took place that spring of 1922. A monument was erected nearby, the only symbol of the gruesome and bloody murders that took place at the farm. Only the ancient trees are left standing in the forest, the only things alive that played mute witness to what happened that horrible, gruesome night. Here's what's crazy. So when I was looking through some stuff and trying to get some information on it, I did find an article where they did say they brought clairvoyants in. This is creepy too, because what they ended up doing says after the investigation had been closed, the bodies of the Gerbers were sent for autopsies. The heads were removed and sent to clairvoyants in Munich to unearth metaphysical clues. So they were trying anything at this point. They were trying to see if their clairvoyants could get anything. I just picture like a
crystal ball and it's a head on the table.
Right. The clairvoyants were unsuccessful, and to make matters worse, lost the heads during the turmoil caused by World War II. They lost the heads. The bodies of the family were eventually buried headless in a cemetery near town.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude.
I know. I sent you some pictures.
Yeah, you guys ready? Let's check out some pictures.
They're a little brutal, so if you have youngsters,
if
you have kiddos watching, this might be where you stop it for a little while.
I'll share these out to the Castro Files as well. If you're listening on one of the audio versions of this, oops, gotta click back on that so I can get this. There we go. So this is the family.
This is the family minus the maid.
Minus
so
the
these
maid.
are 5 of the 6.
Yeah. And if you really zoom in on this picture, like I said, I'll post it out.
Yeah.
It's a creepy picture anyway, because pictures back in 1920 were kind of creepy anyway, right? Like
you couldn't really see features.
I mean, we're not talking like the 1800s,
Right.
but yeah, like the dad's eyes are super
well,
dark.
all of their eyes are dark,
Yeah,
because you can't just really make any
it's
features out.
interesting. Right. So
The next one is very brutal. So
this
is
is the photo of the family covered up.
this is two of them.
Or two of them, yeah, covered up. So these, not trying to be too brutal, but it's
Right.
the reality of what
Right.
happened, right?
They don't have pictures of the kids, which I think is
Yeah,
smart.
thankfully, there's another picture. Somebody was covered up with some hay.
Right. So I think that's the adults, the mom, the dad, and the daughter.
Okay.
Then the next picture is the maid's room.
Okay.
Where
So
she's lying.
I didn't understand the picture when I looked at it.
She's lying on the floor.
Oh.
Do you see her between
Yep.
by the bed?
Yep, absolutely.
So she's lying on the floor, and then this. I didn't.
Last one is the murder.
There was one of the room that they found the young man in, but I didn't want to put that in there. They didn't show him, but it just showed the room, and I thought that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is what the murder weapon would have looked like.
Right.
I don't know if this is
So-
the actual murder weapon or if just an example of what it would have
Which
looked
is
like.
fine. That's
But
fine.
yeah,
Dude. I mean, so there are stories like that. What was the one? I don't know. I can't think of the name of it. But there's a real famous one where she murdered her family.
oh,
Can't think of it off the top of my
Hatchet.
head. Yeah. I wanted to say Molly Hatchet.
But it was like something.
But I think that's
know
a
who you're
band.
talking about.
But anyway,
Hatchet was a band.
yeah.
But you're talking about a young lady that murdered her dad and stepmom.
Yep. And then, bashed her head.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just that's what
20
kind of
lashes. Came
came to mind on some of this. And you go, oh, dude, it's
That's
just
creepy.
such a brutal story.
There's more.
was
There's
there
one more.
more? I'm sorry.
Yep. So then
Oh,
there's
my bad. There we go. Oh, there
and
we
there's
go.
just the
It's
coffins.
coffins on that
with
one.
the
so-
headless bodies. Weird, right?
Okay, so like, does that create its own haunt unto itself?
Well, the farm
Because,
is
like,
gone.
Well, I know, but
The
like,
land. I mean, I'm sure there's something on the land now, but they don't tell
they're
you what it
buried
is.
without their heads. It's like the headless horseman kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
just want my head.
I'm hoping these people all just got to go to heaven after this grisly
hope so,
murder.
too.
Yeah, they deserved some.
Even though
good
Dad was
outcome.
kind of like,
I mean,
no, Dad
but
deserves maybe not to go to heaven.
But it sounded like that was a normal occurrence.
It was against the law.
They said it was unlawful.
Unlawful, yeah. You're not allowed to sleep with your kids,
But
I guess. I
that
think
it was a
that's kind of the rule.
common occurrence, is what the article said.
I don't know.
Maybe it was a different. I don't. It was
Different times, but
I don't
still
know.
not right.
Yeah, no, by no means was it right. But so yeah, I mean, if anyone deserved it, maybe it was the dad, but nobody else did.
Yeah.
Especially
well, he
the
was
kids.
also beating everybody.
Yeah, well, and apparently he killed several of her siblings because his beatings were so ferocious.
Yeah,
that's why he said she was the
Yeah,
only
he definitely,
surviving.
He definitely didn't deserve
Yeah,
to. He,
so
he kind of needed
it's still crazy that it's
the Molly
unsolved.
Hatchet action.
The latest time, at least according to this article, and this is from 2020, or this story is from 2020, 2007 was the last time they tried.
Yeah,
but
so I mean, at a certain point, there's just
the
no more
property's gone
evidence.
now, so you
Yeah.
don't have anywhere to go back to try new type of
It's us,
forensic
people just
stuff.
trying to figure out
Yeah.
and think of new theories and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's 100 years ago.
I
at this
mean,
point,
whoever
so.
did that obviously was a very
They thought it
very,
out,
very messed up person,
messed
so
up and methodical.
hopefully this was their only murder, but you never know, right?
Highly unlikely.
Probably.
So
But
awesome. Thank you guys. That's what we got
you
for you for
enjoyed it.
tonight. Thanks so much. Thank you, babe.
Thanks.
You can go out and check out the show. Give us a little bump on the old thumbs up and then subscribe if you don't mind. Share the show also. It always helps. And
Yes.
then you can find it on the Castro Files. You can find it on Bars Open. But also if you want to listen to these, you can go out to iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all those places where you can listen. And it's going to be under the Bar is Open podcast. Bar is Open with Beth and Greg podcast. So thank you very much.
Thanks, babe.
Next time, I think we're going to have some stories from New Hampshire. We're going
Hopefully.
to be on the road.
Hopefully.
Hopefully we'll have some cool stuff to talk about. Either way, we'll just kind of share some of our
Trip.
creepy,
Absolutely.
creepy
We got
stories.
some creepy stuff planned for us. So
So, thank you very much. Have a great night.
bye, guys. Have a
Take
great
care.
evening.
See ya.